Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about Russell Wilson possibly to the Chicago Bears, along with the Bears' new coaching hire. We will be talking Blackhawks and the significance of number 400. We'll be talking a little spring training, and we will have a guest talking Chicago Bulls. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on. We are seeing AHL hockey. So don't miss out. Head on over to icehogs.com, sign up for the AHL TV package, get a hat, shirt, jersey, tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, sometimes a blind squirrel finds a nut. And there's a possibility that Ryan Pace actually finds a quarterback accidentally.
Okay, do you really think that's going to happen?
No, but it's at a time when the man needs to find a quarterback or he might lose his job. Suddenly, there is available good quarterbacks. I mean, we're at the point where Deshaun Watson has pretty much drawn a line in the sand saying, I'm not playing for the Texans.
Yes.
He met with the head coach, the new head coach, told him, I'm not playing for the Texans. And honestly, as much as they don't want to trade him, I think they need to trade him. And
yeah, I mean, he's pretty serious about not playing for them.
And here's the thing is, in most years, they can really hold him to the fire and force his hand and fine him money. But what's to stop him from opting out? If they're like, no, we're not going to trade you. What's to stop him from saying, I'm opting out of the season because of COVID?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a possibility. He might not show up to camp. He might hold out. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that happen here. You know, a few weeks ago, I was kind of saying, you know, the Texans don't have to trade him. And, you know, maybe the organization and talks to him and, you know, maybe they kind of come to an agreement or kind of make amends and are able to move forward with some of the new people there. But, I mean, from what we're hearing right now, he really does not want to be there. And we've talked about Deshaun Watson and the Bears, as has every football fan in this country. And look, I still think the chances of getting him are microscopic, but the microscopic chances exist as opposed to not at all because of the situation. That the Texans might be so desperate to just trade him away or get nothing from him and don't get anything for the future. Now, the Bears aren't the only team out there that could make a deal. You got teams like the 49ers. You got teams like the Dolphins. Even though they do have Tua, I think there is some speculation that they might not be willing to go forward with Tua if they do have an opportunity to land a Watson. But, you know, there is a very small, narrow door that is open for you to acquire a guy like him. If he's that adamant about not playing for the Texans anymore, that does change the game a little bit. I mean, if Deshaun Watson was willing to go forward, then your chances are pretty much non-existent. But now there might be a microscopic chance because of the circumstances right now with him.
Here's the thing is he could just not show up to training camp and hold out, and then he gets fined. He can get punished. and things like that. But with COVID, there's built-in mechanisms now that they discussed with the league agreed to, where he could just opt out. And then from there, it's not a punishment. He just doesn't get paid for the season, but it doesn't count against him like he's a holdout player. And that's
Right.
a tool that he does have, which is in these unique 2 seasons, we're going to have that. So he could very well just opt out and say, nah, not playing because of COVID. But here's the thing. Sure. Is it a very slim chance that he goes to the Bears? Yes. But it's not like winning the lottery where it's, 1 in 57 million or something like that. He's going to wind up on one of 32 teams.
Right.
And he's saying one of those teams he's not going to play for. So that has him down to 31 teams. And then you start whittling it down a little bit and you're like, okay, well, he's not going to go to the Packers. He's not going to go to the Buccaneers. He's not going to go to, the Chiefs. He's not going to, you just start naming the teams that are set at quarterback and you go, okay, let's say then we whittle it down to 20 teams. So you're down to like 20 teams. You're like, okay, well then, sure, that's still not fantastic odds, but that's way better than it was before. It at least becomes in the realm of a realistic possibility. Now it's up to the Bears to decide, is the juice worth the squeeze, and how much can they, fit under a salary cap and compile a reasonably good team around him.
Well, this is kind of the problem. I mean, it's not as much like making a trade or him, being available for a trade. It's having the assets to do it. Not only having the assets to make a trade, but having the space. You have cap problems and you do not have a massive slew of assets that you can trade. If the Bears cap situation was in much better shape and you had more draft picks to trade, maybe some other tradable assets on your team, then I'd say, the chances go from slim to small, but reasonably there. That's the main problem with me is, the asking price is obviously going to be very high, as it should. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the game. But you also ask yourself this. If he's not playing and they're just kind of stuck in this situation, desperation can be a factor, right? Conceivably.
I see it as probably the deadline. I mean, sure, it's not the official deadline, but I would say the most realistic deadline for him to get traded would be draft night.
I agree.
Is at that point, if you wait till after, or even after the first round, suddenly then every draft pick becomes a future draft pick, which just is not as appealing as a current draft pick because, most people would rather have a cookie today than a cookie next year. And it's so trading before or on draft day makes the most sense. Now, if it's after that, sure, they could still trade him, but it just the allure of your compensation is going to be like, okay, well, we got 3 future first round picks. Okay. I mean, I guess it's good, but then they're not helping you at all now. And the Bears draft pick, the first round for this year is number 20. It's not that appealing of a pick, especially when you look at historical picks at number 20. You're like, okay, yeah, there's some okay players, but not a lot of special players. So, it's not like, oh, they're picking the 5th pick or the 1st pick. And you feel like with the defense they have, if they shore up that offensive line a little bit and keep Allen Robinson and add Deshaun Watson, that the future draft pick is probably going to be, not a very good one for a trade anyway as well. So realistically, the Bears don't have a ton to offer unless they throw players in. And even then, it's, is that something that the Texans want?
Who knows what the hell the Texans want, man? I mean, honestly.
But, mucking up the water a little bit is, fast forward a little bit, because we've talked about Watson, is Russell Wilson now is alluding to the fact that he would like to get traded. And now that is a situation where I don't see him getting traded.
I don't either.
But it does complicate matters, because now Deshaun Watson, as good as he is, Russell Wilson is better. And I'm not saying, light years better. And when it's all said and done, he may not be better. But right now, Russell Wilson is better.
He's a more proven.
Yes.
He's a more proven guy.
Yeah, and he's actually won in the NFL. Right. So he is theoretically available. So teams are going to be bidding for two guys instead of one. So it's supply and demand. You're increasing the supply. So, if you follow market dynamics, it probably, the bidding should not go astronomically higher than you would if it was just one guy and several teams bidding. So, what does that do for Deshaun Watson and the Texans? What happens with Russell Wilson? I don't know, but it's interesting because Russell Wilson came out and said, I don't want to be traded, but if you are to trade me, I would go to the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Saints, or the Bears. I mean, everybody and their mother has asked, why the Bears?
Why would you want? I mean, this is where quarterbacks go to die. Unless he finds the defense very appealing. You think about it, his defense last year was pretty bad.
They were the worst defense in the NFL through 12 weeks.
There you go. They're not the Legion of Boom anymore, that's for sure.
The only thing I can think is he's either seeing, when I won a Super Bowl, we had a really good defense, and having a very good defense and putting together a pretty good offense is a good recipe. And they've got a good defense, and they've had a dog shit offense. I can make that offense better. And the other thing I'm thinking is, there's some part of him that would like to put up more gaudy numbers. And Seattle has been a more balanced team as of late, where Matt Nagy, if he's winning, he will throw the ball 50 times a game and not blink an eye about it.
Right.
So you could win with throwing the ball 50 times a game. Your stats look better. The only other thing I can think of is he's looking at legacy. And he's going to go, if I go to the Bears, it won't be that big of a stretch for me to go down as the greatest player in a team that's been around for over 100 years when it's all said and done. That he could be a Hall of Fame quarterback for the Chicago Bears. I mean, that might say something. Is if you could go down in a historic franchise as the greatest player at an important position, that has to have some cachet in it, right?
I suppose. I have two ideas, kind of. I mean, one idea is kind of what you're alluding to, sort of. I think that, maybe, just maybe, the Bears aren't as unappealing as we like to think they are, that their old, long history still rings a charm with some NFL players. I do think that can be true, as cliche as it sounds. The other thing I think of is, I wonder if he likes Matt Nagy, not necessarily from a coaching strategist point, but just as a coach. I don't really know what goes on in that locker room between him and Pete Carroll. I don't know. Maybe he wants to go to a place where he thinks he could gel better personally with a coach. Now, the Cowboys are on that list, and Mike McCarthy is their coach there. Though Mike McCarthy does have a history of working with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, so take that for what it's worth. I don't know. I really don't know. Those are just some ideas I have.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's throwing things at the wall, and even trying to figure out what his appeal is and what his reasoning for wanting to leave is. Because nobody really understands the total reason. And sure, you never know. Like sometimes you could just be like, you know what? I'm sick of this job and I just want to get a different job. I think we've all had that at some point where you're just like, you know what? I dread going into the work, and you can't really put your finger on it. It's not one thing. It's just going into this place just depresses me, and I want to change the scenery. That maybe that's it. Maybe there is friction with Pete Carroll that, you've been together long enough. You just sort of butt heads a little bit. Maybe it's maybe it's just a smokescreen where he wants some sort of improvement, either improve the offensive line or add another wide receiver. And the best way to get the attention of the team is to threaten to leave. Maybe that's what he's doing.
Maybe.
And I'm always going to be on the side of the player on this. Is if you say you want to go, who cares if you have a contract? Then find a way to go. It's I'm not going to judge his rationale if he's just decided he's tired of rain and it rains too much in Seattle. Okay, whatever. Yeah, I've probably left jobs for stupider reasons, so I'm not going to judge him if he decides. He's a grown man. If he decides that he wants to leave a job and go elsewhere, then you know what? That's his right. Yeah,
maybe. I see that happened. What was it, last week sometime? And then I saw social media, at least, I'm not really on Twitter much anymore, but on, Facebook and other platforms, it was all blowing up like, oh, Russell Wilson Bears. I just think at the end of the day, for me, it's not worth investing my emotion into. I'm not really getting any hopes up with this because I'm fairly confident that none of those things are going to happen. But I can say that it is at least nice seeing a future Hall of Fame quarterback mention your team as a desired place to go. I think there is an argument to be said that there is some worth to that. Even if Russell Wilson doesn't come here or nothing even materializes, no conversation, no nothing. But, maybe you take that as something valuable.
And listen, there was a point in this franchise where we were like, we desperately need pass rushers.
Mm-hmm.
And for all his faults, what did Ryan Pace do?
He got Khalil Mack.
Did anybody and their mother, anybody in the world go, you know what? I think the Bears are going to get Khalil Mack.
No, I'll admit, I thought it was a pipe dream. I really did.
I did too. It was like, there's no way they're getting Khalil Mack. And we paid a lot for him. But we have Khalil Mack. Now, so I'm not going to completely write off the Bears getting either Watson or Wilson. But I'm going to put it in the unlikely category. But, the fact that there are limited options of places they can go. And Ryan Pace does have a history of being very aggressive when he has his eye on a player. I mean, he's traded up for Trubisky, he traded up for Leonard Floyd, he traded up for Anthony Miller, he traded for Khalil Mack. He's not afraid to trade. So, we'll see how this goes. But I'm going to put it in the unlikely category, but the fact now that there are two top tier quarterbacks that have requested a trade just adds a little hint of a realistic possibility that didn't exist, 2 weeks ago.
I mean, it never even crossed my mind. Like, honestly. until that was mentioned. And I saw a really funny meme. I have to talk about this. I saw a really funny meme. It was from Toy Story 2. It's where Woody's having the nightmare that that Andy doesn't want to play with Woody anymore. And he goes, I don't want to play with you anymore. And it's the screen cap of that. And Woody's face is Deshaun Watson. And in the other hand, he's got Russell Wilson. And then Andy's going, I don't want to play with you anymore.
But yeah, so I mean, is as unlikely as it is to get either one of these guys, just there are a few factors that do add to the realism of it. And,
Right.
And I'm not trying to be, a super homer, and I'm not trying to be, meatball guy. I'm just saying is that Ryan Pace has made big splashes, right, wrong, or otherwise. But, so there is some semblance of realism. Now, ultimately, I'm starting to lean that Deshaun Watson does get traded, but I just don't see Russell Wilson getting traded.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at. I don't really think that we have enough concrete material for us to really see a large possibility of Russell Wilson being traded. But again, who knows? We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We have absolutely no idea. Maybe it's more realistic than we think, or maybe there's absolutely 0% chance that happens, and it's just kind of a little bit of buzz. Time will obviously tell, but I think at this point, Deshaun Watson is going to have to get dealt because he clearly does not want to be there. And I mean, that Texans franchise is an absolute tire fire, at least with the Seattle Seahawks. Despite them not being where they were a few years ago when they were legitimate Super Bowl contenders, and obviously they won the Super Bowl the one year, they're still a winning team. They still made the playoffs last year. It's not like they went 4-12 last year.
Yeah, you're right. The Texans are a dumpster fire. Like, they're an absolute joke of a franchise right now, and they're the new Browns. They're the new Lions.
And remember, it was just a year ago when people were really excited about what the Texans could do with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago. People thought the Texans, you had J.J. Watt, who obviously, just signed with the Arizona Cardinals today.
Which
you had him,
shocked
and
me
you
a
had
little bit.
Deshaun Watson, that's crazy.
Yeah, so, I mean, my money is Deshaun Watson gets traded. I don't think it's to the Bears, because he does have a say in where he wants to go. But Russell Wilson, I think, just stays put. And as much as it would be nice to have either one of those guys, if one is to come, I think the odds are, while small, are going to be better that it's Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I mean, you look at the Deshaun Watson market and who could be, in on him. I mentioned a few teams earlier. I mentioned the 49ers. I mentioned the Dolphins. Maybe there's some team we don't even expect making a big move for him.
The 49ers, here's where I think it's even less realistic than the Bears, because they have to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. And I guess they could just cut him, but they would probably try to package him in there. I mean, maybe because, I think, look at...
Jimmy Garoppolo could give the Texans a decent bridge for a few years, right?
Yeah, but he's expensive.
He is expensive, but hey, so is Jared Goff, and the Lions made that deal.
Yeah, but they sweeten the pot in order to do that.
Yes.
Look at how much they gave up for essentially a 1-year rental for Matt Stafford, and in order for them to throw in Jared Goff. So, do the 49ers sweeten the deal in order for them to dump him, or did they just cut a Jimmy Garoppolo?
I mean, if you're gonna cut somebody and replace him with Deshaun Watson, I mean,
So Jimmy Garoppolo is slated to make $26.4 million this year.
that's a lot of money.
But it wouldn't be that big of a cap hit if they just cut him. So it would be $2.8 million.
Oh, that's not a lot at all.
No. So they've already paid most of the salary on him.
And think about it. Think about the 49ers for a second. Think about their defense getting fully healthy again. Then think about their offensive line and what they can do.
Yeah,
and
the
now
running
put
game.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. So I mean that does make it more realistic because they could just cut Jimmy Garoppolo if they are able to trade. I didn't know he had that little of dead money associated with him. So that's a realistic possibility there. Oof.
I mean, if they
don't
did that good. I mean, if they did that, honestly, all I could say is good for them. If they were able to do that.
So I just quickly going through teams that could be after one or both of these guys. Bills, no. Dolphins, yes. I'm going to put the Patriots in the no because I just can't see them making that splash in trading. I think they are more likely to just draft somebody in with their first or second round pick and then making them work and then signing a bridge guy. So I'm going to throw the Patriots in the no. The Jets I'm going to put in the no. Steelers I'm going to put in the no. Browns I'm going to put in the no. Bengals I'm putting in the no. Ravens I'm putting in the no. Texans, leave them alone. Colts got their guy.
Mm-hmm.
Jacksonville I'll put in yes.
Even if they draft, what's his face?
I mean, if you trade for somebody, do you need to draft? I mean,
You spent all that tanking. I mean, I don't know. I think their eyes are pretty set on him.
You're right. I'll put the Jacksonville Jaguars as no. Tennessee Titans, I'm going to put in no.
Yeah, I don't see them doing that. It would be a hell of a move, but I don't see them making that move.
I'm going to put the Chargers as no.
No, Justin Herbert is looking pretty good.
I'm going to put the Raiders as a wild card because John Gruden is always looking for a better quarterback.
Yeah, and let's face it, Derek Carr, I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but he's not a quarterback where you say we can't not have Derek Carr.
Chiefs are a definite no.
Right.
Broncos definitely yes.
Yeah, that's another one. That's another one you really got to consider. If the Broncos could land a Deshaun Watson, again, I think that the Broncos have all the pieces but the quarterback. Drew Lock just wasn't good enough. But if you put an elite guy like Deshaun Watson with that defense and that coaching, you're suddenly looking at an AFC contender right there.
Cowboys, I'm going to put it as a neutral because if they go after one of those two, then that means Dak Prescott goes into the fold, which just adds another quarterback into this mix anyway.
Right.
So no matter what the Cowboys do, there'll be two guys in there. So I'm just going to put them as a net neutral. Giants, I'm going to put yes. While I don't think they might draft somebody, I think that they could be in on trying for one of these two guys.
I think they could be too. I just don't think Daniel Jones is the type of guy where they're going to say, yeah, this is 100% our future, and we're not going to look for any other options.
Yeah, I just don't see them selling the farm, but they'll be in.
Yeah.
Eagles will be in on one of those two at least.
Or at least they'll try.
Washington football team, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, Green Bay, no. I'm going to put the Lions as a no, just because I think they're going to just hit a reset and try to build some assets.
They're a definite no for me.
Yeah, I'm going to put it as a problem. I mean, who knows? Maybe, there's a possibility that they're like, you know what, if we get Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, that we're jump starting this rebuild. But I don't think so. I think they're gonna reset, get their salary cap back in order, and then try to fix everything. Bears have to be all in. I'm gonna put Atlanta as no, because they got to figure out what to do. Their cap situation's a mess, and they got to figure out what to do. Carolina,
pretty much the same with the Saints. Sorry, go ahead.
Carolina is going to be all in.
Absolutely.
The Saints, I don't know what the Saints are going to do. I feel like they would love to be in on both guys. I just don't know how they do it with the salary cap situation.
They're in such salary cap dumps, it's not even funny.
Buccaneers are out. Seahawks are one of the teams that they're on. 49ers are definitely in. Rams out. Cardinals out. So there's a lot of teams that are going to be in the mix for these two guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking real quick at over the cap. Based on their projected salary cap number, the Saints are $70 million over the cap.
Wow. Wow. That's bad.
I mean, they're just going to have to kick this can down the road. And like the thing is if they, Drew Brees walks away, it makes their salary cap worse. Because they still owe him. He's got $23 million in dead money.
Oof.
Which they always knew it was going to happen. The way they kept extending it is there was going to be a year where they were just going to be bad when he retired. And all of these guys have like here's their top guys that make a lot of money, and here's the dead money, the cap dead money associated with them. Cameron Jordan, $17 million in dead money. Michael Thomas, $23 million in dead money. Teron Armstead, $9.6 million in dead money. Taysom Hill, $11 million in dead money. Janoris Jenkins, $7 million in dead money. Drew Brees, $22.6 million in dead money. Andrus Pete, $19.4 million in dead money. Demario Davis, $17.4 million in dead money. Emmanuel Sanders, $6 million dead money. Malcolm Jenkins, $13 million in dead money. Alvin Kamara, $14 million in dead money. Cesar Ruiz, $10 million in dead money. Like, you're going to have to extend all these guys, or just, I don't know what you do. Their cap situation is going to be crazy. And it's going to be like a case study in how they figure it out.
Yeah, no kidding.
The Bears aren't in a great cap situation, but they're in a lot better situation than the Saints.
Yes, they are. As is pretty much every other team in this NFL.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are 43 over the cap. They're in a similar situation. Like Lane Johnson, $40 million in dead money. Like their top guys are just, they're going to have to kick the can down the road on those guys. Extend guys. They're in cap hell too. So the Bears aren't in a great situation, but they're in a much better situation than a couple of teams.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about with the Bears is they added a new coach to the staff today. They added former Texas head coach, University of Texas head coach, Tom Herman, as an offensive analyst special projects coach. So you have another offensive mind, kind of an overseer, planner guy. And I don't think it's a bad hire. It's having more guys with voices in the room. I think that can only improve things. Bringing outside voices in here to make decisions. I just feel like it is a good idea here.
Yeah, I really don't know much about the guy, so hopefully it makes a difference. You just hear a lot about all these offensive gurus they bring in, and so far the results have not been there. But, hopefully he can make some sort of a difference going forward.
Yeah, so, we'll see how this goes. We'll see. I just like the idea of bringing outside voices in to this organization because they need to improve on things. So,
an outside voice I would love the Bears to bring in? Peyton Manning. I would love that.
I think he's happy just making commercials and having a big forehead.
I think so too. But can we go to him and be like, yo, if you come to the Bears, we'll try to set you up with as many commercials as possible and as much chicken parm as possible. Like, please just help us.
We'll let you have your own jingle.
Yeah, right. We'll happily play it at Soldier Field, and I think the fans would fully embrace you.
I think fans would lose their minds. I can't tell you whether or not he'd be good or not, but fans would lose their mind.
Yeah. I mean, arguably the second greatest quarterback of all time. I know many people would say greatest, and I can't fault you for that. Either way, I think Peyton Manning is no less the third greatest quarterback of all time. Whether he's the greatest, second, or third, I mean, he's one of the absolute best football players in the history of the game. And I know that a lot of people with great playing pedigrees didn't always make great front office coach people. You could rattle off names in every sport where that was the case. But I feel like having a Peyton Manning voice in this organization would be pretty great. But, that's me.
So you want to switch over and talk Blackhawks?
I have been waiting to talk Blackhawks. Yes. Let's talk about something that's fun.
So this past week, we've had two series, two-game series, one against Columbus and one against Detroit. And so we saw 2 wins against Columbus and a split with Detroit. I mean, there's been a lot of things to like about what we see with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, one thing that I'd really like to point out, among many things, is you got those 2 wins on the road. And I understand there are no fans in the stands. But still, going on the road against a Columbus team that, they're not great, but they're not bad by any means. They're not the Columbus Poo Jackets of when they used to play in the Blackhawks division back in the day. You don't chalk them up as an automatic win. They got some talented players there. So to go on the road and get 2 wins there is really, really nice. And the fact that you were able now, unlike the beginning of the season, to grind out wins in overtime. You're winning in overtime and you're winning in shootouts. That's really nice to see. Then you come home and you don't look so great against Detroit. You lose a game to them that you wish you could have back. And instead of letting that get to them, they come right back and win 7-2. I mean, that's one really nice thing about this Hawks team is when they do lose a game, they've come right back.
One thing I did learn from yesterday's game is that clearly Grice is German for dog shit goaltending.
Yeah, granted, the team around him is absolute dog shit, but I think after that 5th goal, he was checked out. He was just so frustrated and done.
I mean, his record this year is not good. We sort of lucked out facing him. But that series against, before we get to to more of that. The Columbus wins were nice. You know, they are a pretty good team. And that first one, the 6-5 shootout win, that was one where the Blackhawks had the lead, coughed it up, and didn't give up. They kept fighting and ended up taking the game in a shootout. You know, they were up 5-3 late in the third. So they collapsed a little bit. And I like that. I mean, I don't like that they collapsed a little bit, but to see them keep fighting it out and wind up taking 2 points, I think that was a big deal. You know, it shows the competitive nature and how close they are to actually being a competitive team for something bigger. You know, as much as I wanted to talk shit, Colleton seems to have this young team playing well.
You know, I don't know what he's saying in that locker room, and we've criticized him a lot, obviously. But man, I mean, these guys come to play. And look, it's not always pretty. I mean, you look at last night's game, even though they won 7-2, they were getting heavily outshot for the first 2 periods. Like, honestly. And they were very fortunate that Kevin Lankinen was playing very well. And then they were able to turn on the Jets in the third period, and they were able to just absolutely dominate. And, you know, it ended up being an absolute blowout for a game that was like, what, 2-1 going into the third period? But, you know, my whole point is that this team looks motivated. And there could be a number of factors here. This team doesn't have any pressure on them, really. Nobody expected them to go anywhere this year. I mean, there's no pressure. I think they're playing a bit more relaxed. I also think that because there are so many rookies and youngsters on this team, they are playing for something for themselves. They are trying to prove that they are trying to be, they're trying to make the impression that they are legitimate NHL players. You know, the pressure wasn't really on them to win, but these individual players, you know, they're putting pressure on themselves to prove that they belong in the NHL, so they're really stepping up. I mean, look at Kevin Lankinen. Look at guys like Pius Suter, who has scored some very timely goals this year. You got to really like that. You got to like what you see from that.
You have, if you look at the odds for favorite for Calder Trophy winner, the Blackhawks have 3 of the top 8 players.
So they got Pius Suter.
He's tied for 7th.
Okay. And now, are we talking goals, or what are we talking here?
Points? It's the odds of winning the Calder Cup. So they have 3 guys in the top 8. So Kevin Lankinen is 2nd. He has the second best odds of winning the Calder Trophy. And Kurashev, 7th, tied for 7th with Pius Suter.
Okay.
So
all right.
3 guys. So, I mean, you've got young guys playing well.
Are you on sportsbettingdime.com? I
don't remember where I pulled that from.
Because here on sports betting, I have Kevin Lankinen 3rd, Philip Kurashev, I think, 4, 5, 7th, Pius Suter 8th. So yeah, this list might be a little different, but either way, you see several Blackhawks up there in Kurashev, Suter, Lankinen. I mean, that's great. That's great to see. And we're doing this without Jonathan Toews.
Yeah, what's crazy is, so in the loss this week, the 5-3 loss to Detroit, I mean, Subban didn't look good at all in that game. But the Blackhawks only won 40% of their faceoffs. That's a some of the Achilles heels this year for the Blackhawks are faceoff wins and ill-timed turnovers. And the we saw the both of those things rear their ugly heads in that game. And the thing with faceoffs is, just imagine where they would be, I don't know, maybe if they had 2 injured centers playing.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Toews alone makes a huge difference.
Huge.
And then, of course, you have Kirby Dach, who's out, young stud kid. But, man, I mean, Jonathan Toews makes all the difference in the center dot. All the difference.
I just still, have we heard anything hiding our hair about him?
No, nothing.
It's insane. Like, you normally hear something.
I know someone who works for the Blackhawks in the media knows absolutely nothing.
It's crazy.
And this isn't just some, Andrew Shaw type player on your roster. This is the cornerstone of your franchise.
Yeah. I mean, he was the captain on 3 Stanley Cup victories.
I think it's fair to say that number 19 is going to be hanging in the rafters when it's all said and done.
But it's crazy. You look through mentions on Twitter, nothing. Not even, we're at the point now where people aren't even speculating anymore. They're just like, I don't know.
No.
Don't know.
No. It really hurts knowing that there could be something very wrong with him. Again, he's always been one of my absolute favorite athletes, and I just wish I knew what was up just so I know that he's okay. I mean, it's a general concern for the guy.
Oh, absolutely. It's crazy. You had guesses when Corey Crawford was MIA. You had guesses, but I don't know. You don't have those guesses with Jonathan Toews, and I know somebody that knows. I don't know if it's his wife or fiance or girlfriend, but a friend of mine's good friend's sister is Jonathan Toews' significant other, and I just was like, can you reach out and see if you can get anything? Like, even a thumbs up. I just get a thumbs up. Like, everything's gonna be okay. Just need some time.
You knew this guy, you knew this guy, who 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 knew this guy's cousin.
No. It is. I'm not gonna name names. It is one of my closest friends' good friend's sister. So
okay, that's not quite Dark Helmet, fathers, brothers, cousins.
No. It is not. It is much less degrees of separation. So, yeah.
Because right now, if you look at your centers, you got Matthias Janmark, who's played decently. Can't knock him. I think he's like 4th in the team in points. Yeah, 4th in the team in points with 12. Philip Kurashev, Carl Soderberg, which I thought was a pretty solid pickup. Dylan Strome, who, is... I don't want to knock too much on Dylan Strome. I've always felt like the Blackhawks are a lot higher than him than he deserves to be. I think Dylan Strome is a 3rd, 4th line center and an okay one, but they seem really hell-bent on making him a thing, but that's a story for another day. And then, you have guys like David Kampf that'll play, Ryan Carpenter, Lucas Wallmark. Some of these guys are playing decently, but that you can't compare it to Jonathan Toews, that's for sure.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah, not even. I mean, when it comes to goal scoring, being a two-way player, I mean, you look at some of the careless turnovers and puck handling at times. That's when you really miss guys like Jonathan Toews and Brandon Saad on this team. If you had Jonathan Toews and Brandon Saad on this team with a lot of these other guys, imagine they could be even better. But, you traded Brandon Saad for Nikita Zadorov, who's not really been that great.
No, he hasn't. I mean, he hasn't been terrible, but he's not great.
No, he's just kind of there.
Lumpy and oafy.
Now, here's something I think we need to talk about more, in my opinion. Alex DeBrincat looks like himself again.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good thing.
Yeah, we've seen much better play from him.
I still think last year was just a fluke.
That was, my hope was that, but you never know these days. It's like, is the fluke the couple of good years and they've come back down to earth, or is the fluke the one bad year?
I mean, let's look at Alex DeBrincat for a second. He's only 20. He just turned 23. He's 23. And so far in the National Hockey League, he's played 253 games. He has 98 goals and 100 assists. He's got nearly 100 goals and nearly 200 points. I mean, in his first 2 seasons, his rookie year and his sophomore year, I mean, those first 2 seasons alone, he scored 69 nice goals, 41 goals in 2019. You could say maybe he played a little over his head, but the guy is so young and he's got nearly 100 goals already at age 23. I mean, that's pretty damn good.
This team is fun to watch, and that the hockey has been pretty good, and you can't discount the amazing goaltending they've had. Subban has mostly been good, but he's had some stinkers, like his stinker the other night against Detroit.
Following up a shutout, no less.
Yeah, following up a shutout against Columbus. But Lankinen has been pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give the guy a lot of credit. And, I'm not going to go out and argue and say the Blackhawks have one of the best goaltending duos by any means, but I think it's fair to say that they are playing much better than we expected. I mean, we thought this was going to be one of the weak points of this team.
I believe we thought it was going to be the weak point.
Sure. I mean, I won't argue that. I won't argue that at all.
I mean, we honestly thought there was going to be the main goaltender would be somebody different even.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be Colin Delia.
Mm-hmm.
Who, honestly, unless somebody gets hurt, I don't think is really going to see any more time in the NHL this year.
Yeah, I don't think so. Unless there's an injury. And, I think we're okay with that because these guys are 3 young guys. And they're, you gave them an opportunity, and the guys that have gotten them the chances have just sort of ran with it.
Sure. And you know what I really like about Kevin Lankinen? Even when he gives up a healthy number of goals, like he did the other night in Columbus where they won in overtime, he still comes up with big saves in big moments. I mean, you remember that save at the buzzer in overtime against the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Mm-hmm.
That was sweet. And then he stopped all the shots in the shootout, and they got the win. He also made some pretty big stops the last few minutes when the Columbus Blue Jackets tied the game, and they were starting to surge a bit. He was one of the big reasons that they got to overtime. So you got to respect a guy who is able to kind of keep composure even if he's not having the best game. Because they could easily have some of those overtime games as losses if it wasn't for his goaltending.
Right.
Now, here's what I'm going to say about the Blackhawks going forward. We are about to enter the ultimate test, I believe, for this team.
Yeah, where this next stretch of games is going to be pretty tough, and we're going to see something from this team. Yeah, good or bad, we're going to see something.
Here's the schedule. Thursday, Friday, back-to-back versus the Tampa Bay Lightning at home. Break day Saturday, then Sunday. You got to come back and, again, play the Tampa Bay Lightning. You then got to go on the road and play the Dallas Stars Tuesday, Thursday. Now, Dallas has been a bit disappointing this year, and the Blackhawks have beaten them. But going to Dallas is still not easy to win. It's not.
I mean, you can argue that Dallas outplayed the Blackhawks, even though the Hawks won.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that game they won in overtime with the DeBrincat overtime winner, you definitely got outplayed. And you were able to win thanks to timely goaltending again. So that's going to be tough. Then you got to go to Florida, and you got to play the Panthers twice, the Lightning twice, and then you come home for 2 more against the Panthers. Yeesh. That is tough. What do you think is a good expectation for them?
I mean, honestly, if they come out of this stretch, playing 500 hockey, I'm happy. I'm very happy.
I think so too. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I just named 11 games during that stretch. So there's 22 possible points. If they got like 13 of those possible 22, not bad, right?
Yeah, I would.
A little more than half.
I would be okay with that.
Look, you're not going to get you're not going to get like 18 out of 22. I just don't see that. The Blackhawks, they may be playing a lot better, but let's be real. Tampa Bay and Florida are way better than you right now.
Yeah,
way better.
Yeah, I think you could luck into 10 to 13 points, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is I do believe that they will luck into at least one win against the Lightning and one win against the Panthers. Because look, you're going to be playing the Panthers 4 times and you're going to be playing the Lightning 5 times. I think with all those games against those 2 teams, at least one time against both, you will luck into a win there. Whether it's goaltending, whether it's hitting the post and getting the bounces, I think you will luck into one win against both those teams, at least once. I just don't think we're going to see a game where I would be surprised if, maybe one game, because, every game, every team is an off game, but I don't expect more than 1 or 2 games where they just flat out outplay the Lightning or the Florida Panthers.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, coming out of the stretch, and the Blackhawks players know this. If you've listened to interviews, they've talked about how they needed to rack up as many points as possible in this stretch. And I think that loss to Detroit was really frustrating because they could have padded the stats a little more, had a little cushion going into this. But they know they're going into a really tough stretch here. And I think, honestly, their best case scenario with this young team, and it's going to test their mettle, is to see if they can actually take this one game at a time and look at it that way. Because if they go into it going, you know what, we want to come out with this many points to keep us in the race, looking at the playoffs, I think that's when the wheels come off the wagon.
I agree.
But if they go into it, you know what, we're just going to take this game by game and play hard, and whatever happens. They're going to get losses, but can you take those losses to overtime where you get a point? I think that's going to be the difference. You got to kind of
treat it like the playoffs. Because not only when you think about it, your season is kind of teetering on this stretch. Because if you could at the very least stay afloat, you're in the mix. If you lose like 10 out of 11, you're probably done. So you got to at least stay afloat here. But you got, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. For that team, for them alone, they got to have that one game at a time mentality. We as fans can, analyze, say, we can look at it and say 13 out of 22 or whatever. But I think you're absolutely right. From a team perspective, they got to have that one game at a time mentality. Yeah. And so, if you're right, if they don't go game by game, things are just going to go wonky. So they have to just fight this out, fight it tooth and nail, and really just scrap like they have. And then they've been winning by scrappy hockey. Is go out there, play scrappy, try to eke out a win, steal a win, take games into overtime, and just get points where you can. If you lose 2 to Tampa, but you take them both to overtime, you got to count that as a victory. Because you walked away with 2 points when you could have had none. Oh, yeah. Those first 3 games against Tampa, let's say they win one, lose one in overtime, and then lose one. I mean, right there, those 3 games, that's 6 possible points. If you split those points, you take it.
It's funny. I'm looking at the standings on NHL.com, and the Blackhawks are 3rd place in their division, but they have the 6th most points in all of hockey.
I know they have a lot of games in hand.
They do. So looking at it, they've Tampa. They have 4 games on Tampa, 3 games on Florida.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of games.
That's a lot of games in hand.
But they've got 28 points. So, things are going much better than I think any of us could have expected here.
Look, I am making it appointments at night to watch this team. I mean, the first week, I thought, you know what, I was ready to be completely checked out, like, after the first week, the way things were looking. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be paying as much attention this year and not watching as many games. But now, man, I'm looking forward to every game, just like the old days. I mean, I really am.
I mean, not in the same way.
Play better.
Not in the same
way. No,
because there was times where you're just like, you went there knowing that the Blackhawks were going to roll somebody. Now you're going in there like, you know what, this is going to be a hard fought game, but you're going to see the kids play tough.
And here's the thing: this Blackhawks team so far, we know it's flawed. We know it's very flawed. There's a lot of things that they don't do well. It's not always pretty, but it's entertaining hockey. It's not like every game is just boring and bad and they're just scrapping out yucky wins. They're scoring goals. They're making nice plays. They're coming up with some big saves and big moments. You have some thrilling overtime games. It may not be the prettiest, but it is at least entertaining. And I think there is a lot to be said about that.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm sure you were going to get into this, but I think we have to have a segment dedicated to Patrick Kane for his incredible achievement.
400th goal. I believe there's been 4 Blackhawks that have ever done it, and 100 players in NHL history.
Think about the history of the NHL. It's been around for over a century. Think about how many players there have been in the National Hockey League. And only 100 have scored 400 or more. Patrick Kane is part of a very distinct class that only the few absolute greatest players are a member of.
Yeah, it's insane when you think about it. And
he's 32 years old too. It's not like he's 38.
Yeah, he's still got several more years left of him. When this is all said and done, I mean, I don't want to speculate here, but I'm just trying to put a number on a realistic number of where he could wind up with goals.
I think 500 is absolutely realistic.
I think so.
Can he reach 600? That's the question.
I think that, let's see, goals per season.
You got to remember this too. He's gotten better since those cup years. He's gotten better.
So, I mean, I think 600 is realistic.
So, let's do a little math here because math is fun, right? We like math. It's nerdy. Okay, so let's do whole seasons since 2015, and we'll count last year as a whole season. It was 70 games. It's pretty darn close. So from 2015, 2016 through last season, he has scored 184 goals. So that right there is 5 seasons played. So 184, you average that out, he's scoring like 37 goals on average per season. Now, he's had a few 40-plus goal seasons, you remember in 2016 and in 2019. So he could conceivably get to 500 in a few years, the way he's going. And the dude's not slowing down at all.
No, he's aging like fine wine. Now the question is, can he pass Bobby Hull?
That is a good question. That is a very good question because
6'10".
the guys he has to pass are for all time are Bobby Hull, Stan Mikita, and I think Steve Larmer in goals. And I believe like Steve Larmer's like at 406, so he should pass him this season, barring a disastrous injury or something. So yeah, 406, like you said.
And he is halfway to Gordie Howe.
Wow. Unless Kane is playing like Gordie Howe when he's got gray hair and he's playing with his son. I don't see that happening. I don't see there being another Gordie Howe again like that. I mean, look at Yamir Yager. He was once in a million. And Gordie Howe was really once in a million. But going back to Bobby Hull, I think it is possible. I do. I do think it's possible. It's going to be tough. Now, you're talking just Blackhawks career goals, or are you talking career goals? If we're combining WHA, which I don't think you really can, but I'm just curious.
I don't know. I'm on ESPN's stats list, and they have Bobby Hull at 6'10". I didn't.
6'10" is for NHL career.
Okay.
That doesn't count WHA.
Okay. Yeah. So they only go to the top or the 25. The top 25 in goals, which would be number 25, Patrick Marleau at 563.
Now, keep in mind, Bobby Hull left the Blackhawks to go to the WHA. He was only 33. I didn't realize he was that young in his final year as a Blackhawk. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Yeah. So that means he had 604 career goals by about a little later than Patrick Kane. Now, here is something I do have to mention, and I think we have to mention. Goaltending is so much better now than it was back in the 50s and the 60s.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
If you put Alex Ovechkin back in those days, he's probably scoring like 100 goals a season. Right?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably scoring a lot of goals. A lot of goals.
And that's not to take away from Bobby Hull or anyone of that era, but goaltending is completely different. They didn't have the butterfly back then, the typical butterfly you see today. Goaltenders went out of their net, tried to slash the puck away, or lay down on their face and try to stick away pucks. It was incredibly different back then. And, they didn't really wear sophisticated masks back then. It was either like a Jason mask or they didn't wear masks at all. It was, and they weren't quite as athletic and the net was different. So while we do compare to the all-time great of Bobby Hull when it comes to scoring for Chicago Blackhawks, and again, when I say all-time great, I mean as a hockey player, because I've heard some things about him as a person, but I'm not going to go into that. Just making that clear. But it's sometimes it's hard for me knowing that the game is very different. Very different. If Patrick Kane was playing back then, he'd be scoring like 80 goals a season.
It is funny though. You look at total points, and so total points NHL career, and there's only There's only 14 players that have scored over 1,500 points total in their career. 14 guys in the history. Number 2 is at 1,900. 1921. That's Yamir Yager. And he played until he was 106. Wayne Gretzky's at 2,857.
If you take away all his goals, he's still the all-time goal scorer. Or all-time point leader.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
How crazy is that? He has more assists than anybody has points.
Now, that's the thing about hockey. In baseball, we debate who's the greatest. In basketball, we debate who's the greatest. In football, we're always debating about who's the greatest quarterback. You ask who the greatest in hockey is, and I was talking about this last night with my friends. Shout out to John, who was on the show, Andrew and Chris. Shout out to you guys. We were saying that you ask a hockey fan who the greatest was, pretty much everyone is saying Wayne Gretzky.
And the thing is you could even not like Wayne Gretzky, and you could, you can shit talk him or whatever because he didn't fight anybody, but the guy was phenomenal. If you look, he was the fastest player to ever score 1,000 points. You know who scored the 1,000 points? This was the second fastest person to score 1,000 points.
Who?
Wayne Gretzky scoring his second 1,000 points. So the guy was just absolutely incredible, like insanely incredible. And like, I don't know. I guess I grew up in an era, like I liked Mario Lemieux better. Like Mario, like to me, when I didn't grow up in a hockey family. I was the odd duck that watched it on TV. I always liked Mario Lemieux, and I feel like you chose between Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky. I recognize Wayne Gretzky is better. Like I mean, Mario Lemieux is still one of the greatest hockey players of all time.
Oh yeah, he's arguably top 10.
But he's not Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky scored 92 goals in 1982.
Where ultimately does Alex Ovechkin land on the goals list? Right now, he is 7th. And by the end of the season, he's going to be bare minimum 6th, probably 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even 4th. He's at 713 right now. Ahead of him is Phil Esposito at 717. He's going to pass that very quickly. Marcel Dion, 731. Brett Hull, 741. Yamir Yager, 766. Gordie Howe, 801.
And that's between Ovechkin and Gretzky.
That's between Ovechkin and Gretzky.
Mm-hmm.
He'll never catch Gretzky. But where does Ovechkin have a realistic shot of being?
Second.
You think he can get another, 87 goals?
Oh yeah, I think so.
That would be cool. I like Ovechkin.
I think so.
He's really good. He's fun to watch.
The thing with Ovechkin is, yeah, look, Wayne Gretzky is the GOAT all around. But Alex Ovechkin is arguably the greatest goal scorer of all time. No, he's never scored 92 goals in a season. No, but don't make this sound like I'm taking anything away from Gretzky. But I will say, again, the goaltending is better now than it ever was.
Yeah, right now we're in like a goalie factory where, it's goaltending. I mean, not saying that it's you can just manufacture goalies, but the way they teach goalies to play, it's formulaic. The guy does this, you go into this position, and it really does make it harder to score because the goaltending is far superior.
Yeah, now you can also make the argument too on the other side is hockey today is a lot more subdued in terms of rough, tough, gruff, smash your face in break your jaw type hockey it was 20, 30 years ago.
I think Ovechkin would have been all right in that era to still.
It probably would have.
He's a guy that not shies away from, physical play. I mean, Kane probably would have had a tougher time. You would have had to have a goon on your team to protect him like you did with Gretzky. But, Ovechkin, much like Gordie Howe, was not afraid to play rough.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you look back at Ovechkin and you look at what's ahead of him for him. He's 35. It's not like he's almost 40. So he's got plenty of time to pile on some more goals.
Yeah, it would be cool to see him just end on that list second. To live in the era where, I lived through Gretzky, but again, I didn't grow up in a hockey family. I watched it on my own. So I didn't have anybody to sort of teach me that I was watching absolute greatness.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Gordie Howe is much before my time, but I lived through Yamir Yager, Brett Hull, and Ovechkin now, and Mark Messier, Steve Yzerman, Mario Lemieux, Teemu Selanne. Like, I lived through those guys. So you start to recognize, all right, these are really, really good hockey players. And now Patrick Kane. And so you appreciate what you're seeing with Alex Ovechkin.
Oh, absolutely. How can you not?
I'm just trying to imagine, what it would have been like had you been, I'd been more cognizant of what I was watching with Wayne Gretzky and just scoring at will with people and just the absolute star-studded play he had. I think that'd have been cool because, I lived through the Jordan era. It's hard to argue that he's not the greatest player of all time.
Mm-hmm.
We're living through the LeBron James era saying, you know what? Even though I'm going to argue that Michael Jordan is the greatest, LeBron James is a really good basketball player. And he's all-time top 5, easily.
Yeah, if there was a guy that was truly going to challenge Jordan as the GOAT, even more so than Kobe, it's LeBron James.
You're going to throw in the Bill Russells in there because he's got 112 titles. But, individual play, you're probably going, when it's all said and done, put LeBron James as number 2. We're living through this era looking how great he is. So I'm sad that I didn't recognize as a youth and I didn't have anybody to kind of sit down and go, watch this guy. This guy is going to be the greatest hockey player you've ever watched.
Right.
So I had to go back and watch video and, it's just, you don't get the same appreciation as watching it in real time.
Sure. No, that's totally true. That's totally true. And that's why I try to appreciate every Patrick Kane moment as I can. I could say I was there at the United Center during his rookie season. I remember when he was a teenager. I remember sitting next to my dad saying, this kid is going to be really good. I'll never forget him, scoring the winning goal for the Stanley Cup in 2010 and all those other playoff goals he scored and him continuing to age like fine wine as he continues to build on his career. It's something special. Look at last decade in Chicago sports. He's the best player in the city over the past decade. Any athlete. He is the most accomplished and, in my opinion, the best overall athlete in this city is Patrick Kane.
It's hard to argue. And it's great. And you watched him be the young kid doing his thing when they won the 3 Stanley Cups. And now you're seeing him as the wily veteran with all these young players, just watching him, how he makes everybody around him better.
And, it's crazy, Sean, because sometimes it feels like just yesterday when Kane was just this little kid with big frizzy hair and he was oohing and eyeing and taking the league by storm. It doesn't feel like that long ago. I will never forget in Game 6 against Vancouver, 2009 playoffs. You remember that hat trick he scored?
Mm-hmm.
That game truly showed that that player and that team were set up for absolute greatness. That was like their version of the 2015 win over the Cardinals for the Cubs. That was the game that showed that this team was there and it was going to accomplish something great. And he was 20 years old. Again, I was a freshman in high school. And sometimes that it feels like that was just a few years ago. That was over a decade ago now.
It's crazy to think about.
And I just wish that 400th goal, I mean, almost everything was checked in the box for an ideal milestone goal. In your home arena, wearing a really cool throwback sweater against your oldest historic rival. The only thing that was missing, well, okay, two things. One, it was on national TV, so Pat Foley didn't call it. That is one notable thing. The other thing, boy, imagine if there were 22,000 people in the stands.
Just imagine if Jonathan Taves was there.
That too. That's a good point.
You know, while you're talking, I just was looking at something. Wayne Gretzky finished his career being a 2-point-a-game player.
That's nuts. I mean, that's just... How can you argue there is anyone better than him? Honestly.
It's unreal. Where are we at? Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane is a career... what games has he played?
996.
So he scored. So he's like a little over 1 point a game for his career.
Yeah, right.
And Gretzky is almost 2. He's at 1.92131809 points per game. That's unreal.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a special guest on the line in a few minutes. So I want to quickly talk a little baseball. There's not a lot going on.
Hey, spring training's back.
The one thing I want to talk about is, I don't know if you were listening to the interview with Danny Parkins, where a certain leadoff hitter for the White Sox said, fuck it, we're the best team in the AL.
I heard about it. I didn't actually hear the interview, but I definitely heard about it.
Yeah, I was listening. They dumped it. That's
funny.
It was pretty amazing because he was being so humble, and then just finally at one point he was just like, nah, fuck it. We're the best team in the AL. And I love that attitude. Tim Anderson is great. I love him.
Hey, I think it's the attitude you have to have going forward, honestly.
Absolutely.
You can't win without thinking you can win.
Absolutely. I love that. And, it makes you root for the guy.
I think it's the best winning attitude that the White Sox have had in a while. And I still don't like the Tony La Russa hire. I still don't like Tony La Russa personally. But if there is one thing I will say about Tony La Russa, I do think that he will try to get the best out of his players. I really do. He's on the Hall of Fame for nothing.
I don't know if you saw the headline on the sports page of the Sun-Times the other day, where it said...
I don't get the Sun-Times, so no.
I don't either. I saw they tweeted it out. It was a picture, and it said, "Penn is mightier." And because I'm 6 years old, all I could think is, penis mightier.
Oh, my God. Oh, brother.
I can't even... I have no idea what the rest of the article was about. In big bold letters, it said, "Penn is mightier." And it's when I tweeted the picture and I was like, "Penis mightier." And a bunch of people tweeted like, I can't unsee that now.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. There was something I misread the other day. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it made me like double blank. I'm like, oh, okay. I wish I remember what it was, but I kind of had a similar moment to that.
Those moments are funny.
Oh, they are. They're hilarious.
Also on the other side of town, Javi Baez was talking about how the World Series really took a toll on that team. And, it's nice for them to acknowledge that, because as fans, we really did see that. We saw the fact that they just didn't look like the same team, that something was taken out of them. And he actually hear players say that the World Series took something out of them, took a toll on them, makes it feel like, all right, what I was seeing, what I was with my own eyes wasn't some mirage or anything like that.
Well, what I did say in 2017 was, we remember how it ended. They won 92 games. They won the division. They were down, five and a half games at the All-Star break. And then they were able to surge and win and play more like to where they were. I do feel like that World Series hangover, that mythical World Series hangover that people did talk about, I thought that was very real. I really did in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, who knows how long it lingered.
But after a while, I don't know, maybe it's me being too critical, but after a while, that's kind of like, really? Like, if you want to say that for the first half of 2017, I think it makes complete sense. I think it does. But years later,
I mean, I'm sure the immediate effect, but you saw injuries creep up, and I'm sure that mindset, the physical lingering probably is gone, but the mental aspect of it very well could, especially when you saw yourself, you were on the rise, you hit that cusp in 2016, you're the team, you won, and then to see yourself creep down from there, like mentally, that's just, when you look at athletics and a team is trying to hang on rather than you're trying to stave off somebody rather than hunt somebody down, it's a different mindset, and trying to hang on to something rather than claw and fight for something. It's a much different, I guess, visceral reaction. And you wonder, does that change how you play, changing your mindset like that?
I don't know. I feel like every year, every spring training, we hear the same, they weren't as focused last year, it's going to change, yada, yada. And we hear that, and then they haven't won a playoff series since 2017. I feel like we hear that excuse every year. And
yeah,
I'm kind of sick of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly,
I'm
kind of sick of it.
You don't want that excuse. You want your guys to win. You want them.
Did the Blackhawks stop after 2010? No. Did Michael Jordan stop after 91? No. Did the Yankees stop? No.
Did America stop when the Germans bombed Pearl? So, I'm not saying it's a good excuse. I'm just saying is you wonder when guys are finally acknowledging that there was a mental aspect to it. Is that the first step in going, you know what, let's cut this bullshit and actually play like we're meant to play?
If you would have told me that 2 years ago, I would have said, okay, that's cool. Now I'm just thinking it's just another typical spring training. And look, I'm not saying what he said isn't true. I'm not saying that at all. I just think that admitting that right now just kind of rains hollow on me, because I feel like there's always some form of, we weren't as focused as we were in 2016 every year since then. And where has that really gotten them? Maybe I'm being overly critical here, but it doesn't do a lot for me. Just being completely honest with you.
But I want to move over here because we have a guest, the one, the only, my friend, your friend, Mr. C. Red Fred.
Hey, how are you guys? What's going on?
Hey, Fred.
Hey, Alex, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are
related
you?
to J-Pat?
He's my older brother.
Get out of here. That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
You had to go to U of I too?
I did not. I went to a small school in the Chicagoland area. He's the U of I guy, but I am very much a U of I fan. So I've been enjoying the basketball team this year.
Good, man. Good. Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited to chat, so it should be a good time.
Yeah. So, the fact is we both love the Bulls, but I'm a football, hockey guy, and Alex is a baseball, hockey guy, and basketball is. We like to have guests on to teach us better than just being fans, and we've had J-Pat on, we have had Big Dave on, we have had numerous people on, and I've always wanted C. Red Fred. So, welcome aboard.
Are you sure? Are you sure you got the right guy? I mean, yeah, I appreciate the kind words, but yeah, I'm just a fan, super fan talking basketball. But
It's okay.
I got a passion about the beloved team. I mean, they've brought more joy to my life than any other team in Chicago combined, I would say. And because I'm old enough to remember the 6 championship teams. So I think the team's kind of unjustly criticized in the city for whatever reason, and so I can talk ad nauseum about the beloved Bull.
True story is I worked for the Bulls during one of the championships, and I tried to run out on the court when they won, and I made it about 1/6 of an inch onto the court before I got gripped up by somebody and escorted.
Get out of here! What year? Which one? Was it 92? Or was it the second?
Is the second one.
96.
Yep.
And then 90. Yeah, 90. Wow, that's awesome.
So is
Yeah,
that the United Center?
Yep.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the United Center or the old Chicago Stadium.
No, it was a little. I'm a little. That was my college era, so I did some work for the Bulls, and I was like,
Holy cow, we got to be about the same age because that's right around my college era too.
and I'm like, I am going to take this advantage of this, and I am going to go, and didn't go as far as I thought I was going to make it.
Well, God bless you, man. That's awesome. That's great stuff.
In my head,
Yeah,
in my head, it was
times.
going to be, I'm going to hug Jordan. It's going to be that iconic picture of Jordan having me in a headlock, hugging me, and did not materialize.
Can you imagine that? Well, yeah, that will happen, when security around the great one. But, I can't blame you for trying, man. That's awesome stuff. If I were in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing.
So,
Okay.
so we
ahead.
want to have you on, and because you are, if not the biggest rah-rah Bulls guy, you are up there, and we're actually starting to see things to be rah-rah about after, a pretty dark era of Bulls basketball.
Well, I don't really consider myself to be rah-rah. It's kind of funny. Like, I'm not as excited as everyone else is because I totally expected this team that's performing like they are this year to perform this way last year. If you look at it, 13 of the 15 guys were on the roster last year. Zach LaVine, Thad Young, all these guys were on the roster. We just had an incompetent buffoon as head coach who really kept the team from realizing what they should have been. But I'll always push back and say it hasn't been that bad in this past decade. I think we're spoiled as Bulls fans. It really wasn't that long ago since we were up 2-1 in 2015 on the Cavs, and the officials refused to grant Blad a timeout that would put us up 3-1. So, I do not look at this as being horrific. I actually like the 3 Alphas team. I'm in the 5% that actually thought that was a good team that was up 2-0 on the number 1 seed. So I don't think this has been a horrible era of Bulls basketball. I lived through what was a complete disaster, which was the post-Jordan Jerry Krause years. That's a disaster.
Oh,
that
there's nothing
era
good about the
no
Tim
hope.
Floyd era. There was absolutely no redeeming qualities of that area. At least I could say this. At least the last 2 years, we've had some pretty decent players like Zach LaVine to watch. Where who was the best player in the Tim Floyd era? I mean, honestly, could you even name a player that you said, "Oh yeah, I like watching him"?
No, I mean Tyson Chandler. I guess you would probably make an argument. He wasn't even good for us. Who was the? That's a great question. Who was the best player of the Tim Floyd era? Yeah, actually, I would say Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose came to the Bulls, and that was actually a decent year where I felt like there was actual hope for the team. He actually, I thought, played pretty well, but that was right before Krause got fired. But I mean, that era there where you go from winning a title to just abject failure, complete embarrassment. I still remember, I always go to NBA games about as early as possible to watch guys warm up. And I remember watching some of the guys on the court shoot jump shots. And they were probably shooting about 30% on an empty court. And I just remember looking at my friend saying, like, these guys, this is just awful. I mean, this sucks. You see guys at Lifetime Fitness shoot better than this. And it was just a disastrous era for the Bulls. So anything in that perspective looks good to me.
So what do you think is the biggest difference between Zach LaVine under buffoon and Zach LaVine under a real head coach?
That's a great question, because I'm having a little bit of a hard time saying what's the difference between Zach this year and last, other than he's just a little bit better in every aspect of the game. I think he's facilitating a little more. I always thought that was an issue with Zach, that he played especially last year, far too much hero ball, especially down the stretch, not looking to pass for others, set up others. And that's really what the true superstars often do, is when they get hit with a double team, they'll move it around and set up other players for success. He did that in a game, I remember, at the end of last season against Washington. And I was like, maybe he's turning a new leaf. But, it's hard to diss on Zach LaVine. He's not the problem, right? Or he wasn't the problem last year. And this year he's just brought it up his entire game. He's just been absolutely incredible. So I have no issues with Zach LaVine. But, I am a little concerned. I had Darnell Mayberry on on my Big Red Bus podcast a week or so ago. He brought up an interesting topic that I hadn't noticed, and he obviously watches every Bulls postgame. And he brought up the point that Billy Donovan was exceptionally harsh on Zach, and not harsh at all on like a guy like Lauri Markkanen. And I never heard that before. I didn't notice it. I'm sure as heck going to pay more attention to it. But I really thought that was an interesting comment, and made me think, maybe he isn't untradeable. Maybe there's a possibility that the Bulls plan on moving Zach LaVine. And, that gives me great pause and causes me some concern, because I think the team should be building around him.
Though, is if you look, and I'm not saying that Billy Donovan and Zach LaVine are in the same category, but you look at the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in football, and the harsh words he had about Tom Brady in the early part of the season. Tom Brady is the best quarterback that's ever played. Sometimes you see head coaches be harsh on the best player because they expect greatness. They're pushing them to be as great as they can be, when there's other guys where A, they can't handle that criticism, and B, they don't have the lofty expectations for that player. I've noticed the same thing. So I wonder if he's pushing Zach to the point where he knows he can, take it, and also pushing him to be the player that he thinks he can be. Because, I think they're, as good as Zach has been, I think there's another gear he has.
Absolutely. He's gotten better every year, and he's only 25 years old. That's why I kind of laugh when people put limitations on where he can go. I don't think he can do that. He's gotten better every season. And it's kind of hilarious when you look back at 2018, that summer, when the Bulls signed him to an extension for, 19.5 a year, which in retrospect looks like, it's a bargain. But half the fan base, led by Nick Friedel and some other members of the media, also were decrying that move and saying how foolish it was. So, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous in retrospect, but he's managed to get better every year, and that comes with hard work. And you bring up a great point. I coached my son in 6th grade. My father coached for like 35 years, so I've been around a lot of good coaches. And I think you're right. Some guys can take that kind of push, and other guys can't. You have to really understand your team. But the job of the coach, there's 2 types of coaches in history. There's the guys that ask the talent to adapt to their system, and there's guys that adapt their system to the talent. Well, Donovan's the latter. There's guys who've had success demanding that the talent adapt to their system. Tom Thibodeau was like that, Bobby Knight. But those guys are really kind of a dying breed. You really need to, in this day and age and era, understand what your players do well and put them in position to succeed. And that's what Donovan's done. I think he's done an excellent job.
You brought up before the, hero ball. And there was a few games early on this season where you saw Zach play a little hero ball. And Donovan let him, and it almost seemed like he was letting him taste failure to try to build him, be like, that's what happens when you do it the old way, try it my way and see how it goes. And I almost felt like he was, he lets people fail to see, all right, you don't want to buy into my system. Let's see what happens when you don't.
Well, that's a great point. I don't know if that's true, though. The Bulls have had 3 horrific losses this season. There was one at Golden State where the NBA screwed up a call, and they actually admitted it in the post-game notes. There was a loss against Oklahoma City that should never have happened. That was an embarrassment.
Oh, that was brutal.
They had a 10-point lead that they blew down the stretch, and I kind of went into detail why they lost that game. That was Lauri Markkanen's fault. It was his first game back, but he was terrible in that game. I blame that on him. And Zach had a couple key, costly turnovers at the end of that game. But then they lost to the Trailblazers, too, in a game they should never have lost. Those are 3 losses there that, I'd say 9 times out of 10 the team would have won. If you would have, kind of change those around, the Bulls would be over 500, close to the 3rd, 4th, or 5th seed. I think Billy's trying to win every game, with the possible exception of the last one that they lost to the Suns. When he closed with Kobe White, who just got hurt and clearly didn't have it. I thought Sato had a really good game, and he should have been, if he was trying to win, close with Sato. But for the most part, I think he's tried to win and close with Thad Young and the vets, because those guys are going to give him the best chance to win. This has been a constant theme all year. He's starting a lineup for the most part when healthy that's all 25 and under. We've been getting our rear end kicked until the bench comes in and then completely turns the situation around. So I think he's kind of balancing the fine line between development and winning. And I think he's doing a good job of it. I really think he is trying to win, though, for the most part down the stretch.
Fred, did you expect the bench to be this good? Because I certainly didn't. I wouldn't think they'd be this productive. And kind of to your point about Billy Donovan, I feel like he's got that mentality of we have to establish a winning culture, to your point. Because, we all know that the Bulls aren't championship primed this year, but I feel like you have to establish a winning culture early and try to win as much as possible. That seems to me what Billy Donovan's trying to do.
I actually expected this team to play significantly better. I think the Bulls from like 2 to 10 have the least amount of delta, arguably, than any team in the league. And what I mean by that is that when you get down to 7, 8, 9, 10, they have some guys that are rock solid rotation players. I brought up Denzel Valentine, who was really basically buried by Jim Boylan in one of the most unprofessional acts I've ever seen from a moronic head coach. And the guy can play. He's an excellent rebounder, excellent ball handler. He can shoot the ball. And it's clear, Billy, it's another point I'd like to make, that he's trying to win, because there's no reason to play Denzel Valentine if you're looking for development. He took the qualifying offer. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. He's probably not going to be on the team next year. But he realizes, hey, this guy can play. He's a smart player from Michigan State, and I'm going to give him a chance. And he's taken advantage of that and played excellent, and played some excellent basketball. So the team, when you look at Thad Young, Sato, and Temple, and Otto Porter Jr., these guys coming off the bench could start for a lot of teams. So I absolutely expected the Bulls to perform well, probably not to this level. But that's one of the big advantages that they had over any team in the league, is that they had a number of quality veterans on the bench. And I actually thought a guy even like Chandler Hutchinson, who's like 11th or 12th on a team, would probably be in rotation for many teams.
What do you think has been the Achilles heel of this team all season?
Well, without a doubt, I think they need another good perimeter defender. This is kind of an argument that I have with my good friend Mark Kay from Australia. So if anybody who spends time on Bulls Twitter will see us arguing often. And there's a group of fans I call the Ball Boys who are, adamant that we need to get Lonzo Ball into town. And because we need a pure point guard. And I don't think that's the way the NBA is anymore. I don't think it's 1989. You don't need a John Stockton directing plays anymore. I keep on pointing this out. Like, how are the Bulls really suffering without a true point guard? Zach LaVine's having a career year. Patrick Williams is playing very well for a rookie. For the most part, almost every guy in this team's having an excellent season. So why are we really struggling without a quote-unquote playmaker or true point guard? I don't believe it. I think you can get along. There's a lot of teams like the Blazers and look at even some of the best teams in the league, the Clippers, the Lakers. None of these teams have a true point guard. You don't need a true point guard in today's league anymore. So I thought the Kobe, Zach LaVine backcourt was fine. The issue is at that 3 position, you need a stud defender to make this work. That's what Cleveland did. I mean, Cleveland has 2 guys in the backcourt and Sexton and Garland who are really porous defensively, but they drafted Isaac Okoro, who's an absolute stud, playing 33 minutes a game, one of the best defenders already in the NBA. The Bulls don't have that. Patrick Williams will be good someday, but he makes far too many mistakes, I think. And I don't think there's any question about that. And I think he's a natural 4. And I think he's played significantly better since he's moved to the 4 due to the injury of Lauri Markkanen. So I think the number one thing the Bulls need is kind of a Mikal Bridges type of player at the 3 position, a guy who can defend. What Otto Porter Jr. used to be when he was healthy, I think would just create immense improvement for the team and really drive them and propel them into potentially a challenger in the East.
What's your opinion on Kobe White? I've talked to Doug Tonis about it, and I've got his opinion.
Well, that's not a good opinion then, because Doug does. I know exactly what Doug feels about Kobe White, my co-pilot on the Big Red Bus. I like Kobe White. He just turned 21. That's an important thing to remember. I think no player in his team has been asked to take on a more difficult job than basically learning the point guard position, facilitating for others. He's been at times this season absolutely awful in doing that, but I've also seen improvements as a passer, as a playmaker. His assist numbers are up. Almost every offensive statistic were up at some level outside of like his shooting metrics, but they weren't that far off from where he was last year. But that's the thing about Kobe. He's really got to shoot the ball better. That's where we really need him to shine as a 3-point shooter. And if he's not able to hit 3-pointers around between 38 and 40% and really improve his outside shooting, I think he's going to be it's going to be an issue pairing him with Zach LaVine, because both those guys are subpar, in my opinion, on the defensive end. It's going to cause major issues in the long run for our bigs, who are going to just get in consistent foul trouble unless, you start getting a guy who's able to stop some people out in the perimeter. That's been a big issue, too, is the foul trouble for our bigs due to that fact of the breakdowns on the perimeter. But there's just so many good things about this team this year overall that I think if Kobe White was playing like he did in the last 10 games of last season, we'd be even more excited about where the Bulls are going to be. Because right now, if you look at it, Zach LaVine's out playing where I expected him to be. Actually, Lauri Markkanen, when he was healthy, was playing at an exceptionally high level. Patrick Williams, great. Wendell Carter Jr., great. Garrett Temple, great. Thaddeus Young, great. Otto Porter Jr. was solid when he was healthy. And Sato, I think, has played well. And Valentine. I mean, you can go up and down the list. Kobe White's the only guy who's underperformed. But again, he's 21, so I expect him to get better. And I think you've seen signs of that recently.
I look at Kobe White, and it's sometimes frustrating for me because I see the talent in him. I really do. I think that kid can ball, and I think that he still has very high potential to be a very good player. I feel like sometimes when he's not doing as well in a game, this is just my observation, and you could tell me how accurate I am on this. I just feel like there are times when things aren't going well, he really tries to kind of force it a little too much, and I think that gets him into further trouble. I would just like to see a more consistency from him, at least to start.
Agree 100%. He does force it too much. But one thing about Kobe I think that's a little bit understated is how good he is usually in the clutch. He's hit a lot of big shots this year in games where I thought he was pretty awful. I think he's actually performed better than Zach has in terms of making shots down the stretch this season. And I just hope it continues, that you can continue to see that growth on his part, as far as hitting big shots when it matters. But yeah, you bring up a lot of good points. He definitely does try to force it a little bit too much, but he's such a key part of this team, a part of our future, right? I mean, he's really got to be. I brought up this analogy, and I think it's been discredited by a number of people, but I really kind of foresee us to potentially be Portland East, in that Zach LaVine, if you look at it, is a very similar player to Dame Lillard in terms of offensive skill, can score from anywhere, get to the line, do almost anything on the offensive end. And I think Kobe has to be that CJ McCollum. They're both combo guards. They both can shoot off the dribble. They both can shoot off, catch and shoot. I want to see that continue to flourish and develop into a team like Portland is in the West. But unlike Portland, we'll have that third player, who I hope is Patrick Williams, really develop into a superstar and really take us to the next level. But Portland hasn't been a sad story. It's just they've been in the West, where elite teams like the Lakers and obviously before that Golden State.
Imagine if they were in the East.
Yeah, exactly. They'd be in. They would have been challenging the Cavs. And they more than likely would have been in the finals the last couple of years. So I agree 100%. Although they have had a ton of injuries, but yeah. So Blazers East is not a bad goal, especially if that third player. I think that's been the issue with the Blazers. They've never had that third player. Their third best player is probably Nurkic, who's always hurt. So it's a tough road for them.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the 3 points shooting for Kobe White, it is so off some nights. Like tonight, he's 1 of 5. Against the Suns, he was 0 for 5, 0 for 6 against the Wolves. But then he was 4 of 7 against the Rockets. It's just, I mean, how does he get more consistent as a 3-point shooter? I think that's what we need, is the consistency.
Well, yeah, that's done only through work. So, based on everything that I've heard, he's got an excellent work ethic, and that's the most important thing in order to develop as a 3-point shooter. It just matters getting in the gym and shooting until your arms fall off. And I think whatever that ceiling is for Kobe White, I have no concerns that he's going to reach it. But that's the question, right? What is that ceiling? Is he just a 6-man, or is a elite starter who can be a multi-year all-star? I don't know if it's the all-star level, but CJ McCollum is the guy I compare him to. I'm hoping that he can get to that level.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, not as amazing as I would hope. McCollum's never made an all-star team. You know what I mean? I'd really like to see an all-star, right? Him develop into an all-star, but McCollum is a very, very good player, right? No denying that. He's like a Drew Holiday. Obviously, he never made an all-star team. There's a lot of talent out in the West. But, if you can get to that level just below that, that's a very good place to be. I'd like to ask you guys a question, if you don't mind, before we go any further.
Oh, sure.
As you guys who define yourselves as casual Bulls fans, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if I say the word John Paxson? What do you think of John Paxson?
He drives me crazy.
Okay.
I think my biggest thing with John Paxson is that I don't think he's a stupid man. I just think he didn't accept responsibility for things that went wrong. I mean, the guy was in that role for a really long time, as far as front office, tenures go, and he had the opportunity to hire how many head coaches? And
he hired Skiles. He fired Cartwright, hired Skiles, hired Vinny Del Negro because Reinsdorf overruled him on his first 2 choices, which were Doug Collins and Mike D'Antoni, which were both excellent choices. Then he hired Tibbs. Then he hired Fred Hoiberg, and then he hired Boylan, and that was his undoing. The reason I mention this is because I will like to point out, like, do you think it's going to be pretty easy for Arturas to beat the record of John Paxson?
I mean, I don't care about the record. I think he's going to have a team that is more competitive for a longer time period.
Good. All right, so that's a good, interesting point. I will point out in 2007, the Bulls drafted Joakim Noah. Joakim Noah was acquired with the 9th pick, even though the Bulls had been a playoff team the year before. And the reason they got that was through the Eddie Curry trade which allowed the Bulls to swap picks with the Knicks. So they got Joakim Noah at 9. That was a very controversial pick. That was a home run. The next year they won the lottery, obviously, and drafted Derrick Rose, despite, a third of the fan base demanding that we get Beasley, since we already had Kirk Heinrich on the roster as our point guard. The next year they drafted Taj Gibson in the 20s, one of the favorites of this fan base, and well-deservedly so. The following year they hired Tibbs, and then the year after that they hired Jimmy Butler. They drafted Jimmy Butler number 30. I would argue those 5 years represent potentially the best 5-year run for any GM, not only in Bulls history, in the history of Chicago sports. Those picks were insane. And they created a team. He created a team that is beloved in the city to this day, deservedly so, and it didn't win a title because of a massive amount of injuries to players, not just during the regular season, during the postseason. So I don't think it's that easy to beat that kind of record. Like, I don't think the issue was with the Bulls under John Paxson. And regardless of what people say about this team now, 13 of the 15 guys on the team were Paxson, either draftees or signed as free agents or traded for. That, including their two best ones in Thad Young and Zach LaVine in the Jimmy Butler trade. So I don't know. I think there's no one more unfairly criticized than John Paxson, and people have that general idea that he was a moron. And I think it's unfair. And I think eventually people hopefully will look back. I'm definitely going to make these kind of statements on every show I'm on, that we should really look back and say, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. I mean, of course there were mistakes, most notably Doug McDermott and the hiring of Jim Ball Boylan, who was a complete disaster. And I agree, we should have gone in another direction. It was time, but he wasn't a bad GM.
I don't think he was a stupid basketball man. I just think some of the environment he created was toxic. I mean, anytime you punch a head coach, probably not a good environment.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
When you have
no doubt about that.
When you have a spy between the team and the players and the front office, not a good environment. So I think he didn't adapt to more modern basketball. I think he hit a wall and stayed way past, his shelf life.
And that's kind of the point I wanted to make too. Like, if you want to argue that John Paxson did a very good job in the late 2000s, I can't argue with that, considering the players he drafted, considering that they were set up to make title runs before a bunch of injuries happened. I can't argue that. It's everything after that. And, let's face it, sports is a what have you done lately for me business. So, I can give him credit for the good that he did. I just think that with a lot of what Sean just said, with a lot of the toxic things that have happened, with a lot of the very notable mistakes that have happened with the franchise the past few years. And I mean, for me, Jim Boylan, that was the final straw for me.
No doubt.
I mean, that was just horrific in every aspect.
And quickly I just want to point out with, the best tenure you said in Chicago sports
5 years stretch. 5 years
is the
overall.
The Bears did draft Dick Butkus and Gale Sayers in the same draft, and the Blackhawks drafted Kane and Taves in back-to-back drafts.
Very good. But Rose and Noah accomplished as much as any of those guys. Let's be honest. I mean, as great as Dick Butkus and Gale Sayers were, and I love both those guys, they never won anything.
Kane and Taves brought home 3 Stanley Cups.
Kane and Taves that obviously won 3 Stanley Cups. Yes, you're not going to argue with that one. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good stretch there. No doubt, can't argue with that.
And they brought in Hossa as a free agent.
That stands up. But basketball obviously a different sport. Those 5 picks: Jimmy Butler at 30, Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, and Tibbs, who's arguably, according to most people, the second best coach in Bulls history. That's a pretty good stretch. And that's the other thing too. They wouldn't have won a title. I don't understand. The Bulls are the only NBA team I can think of in history that lost 5 starters, either winning or tied in the playoffs. Not the regular season, the playoffs. They lost Derrick Rose when they were up basically 1-0 against the Sixers. People forget they lost Joakim Noah later in that series. That's number 2. Luol Deng got hurt against the Nets in the following year, out for the rest of the playoffs. And Paul Gasol in 2015 went out with the Bulls up 2-1 against the Cavs. And then also, of course, Rondo breaking his thumb with them up 2-0 against the Celtics. No, there's no stretch like that anywhere in basketball history. It's unheard of. So a lot of bad luck with John Paxson. We might have had
I've told the story before on the air, but I remember Giordano's. They they had a partnership with Derrick Rose, and when he was coming back from his injury, there was or maybe when he got injured, they had like these little, like things where you could write a well wish and post it in their store or in the restaurant. And I went to go pick up a pizza, and there was one just hanging there. It just said, "You owe us a championship, asshole."
Oh my gosh!
Like,
to Derrick?
Yeah, I was like, "Welcome to Chicago."
Who in the world would have put something like that up? Man?
I think they paid $1 to be able to write that.
It's kind of, it's just thinking about Derrick Rose. It's just so heart wrenching when you think like how good he was. I think people forget how just incredible the guy was as a basketball player, and we basically lost him then at the 2012 playoffs. He misses the next year, and then he missed the following year. He basically missed 3 straight playoff series, three straight playoff runs. Just unbelievable. It's incredibly bad luck. So incredible bad luck. But what are you going to
do? So going back to this team, we're seeing more playing time from Luke Cornett. Why?
Well, he doesn't really have another choice at the backup 5 position. I think he likes the fact that Cornett allegedly is a threat from the outside as a 3-point shooter to pull out the bigs. And anytime you pull out a big, that's great for Zach LaVine and Kobe White and, whoever else needs to attack the rim from the perimeter. So I'm guessing that's why he's doing it. In defense of Cornett, no one's been more critical of him than me. He's actually played really well at points in the last 2 games. I think he's having a good game tonight against Denver, last I saw, and he actually had a good game against Suns. So, I guess I agree with you. I can't believe I'm arguing in defense of Luke Cornett. I'm embarrassed with myself.
Who would have guessed that's where we are in 2021?
Exactly. But, big picture for the Bulls. I don't think anybody could be really upset with where we're at right now. I mean, yeah, it's frustrating. You would like to be a little further along as a team. But I think we're in the playoffs this year unless we trade Thad Young. But if we keep Thad Young, I'd be shocked if the Bulls don't make the playoffs.
Do you think they trade a guy like Thad Young if they could get a good deal for him?
I think they probably will. This is something I've argued with Sylvian on ESPN 1000 many, many times. I think it would. I think this team needs to taste the playoffs. I think for the development of this team, Zach LaVine's never been in the playoffs, and Thad Young has been so critically important to this team that trading him would be a disaster. I think it would cause the Bulls to potentially miss the playoffs. But I also understand you can't just give away. If their deal is good enough, and I think a deal like that is with Boston. Boston needs Thad Young. They understand how important he would be to their team. They need a wing player who can pass and rebound and play good defense. If Boston offers their number 1 this year and Aaron Nesmith, who was their number 1 pick last year, I think you got to make that deal. But if it's just a late number 1 where you're rarely going to find starters, and most of the time they're rotation players or guys who are out of the league in 4 years, then you don't make the deal. But if the deal's good enough, then you make that deal. It's a tough call though. I think they will probably trade him.
So the East is pretty wild right now. You've got the 76ers, you've got the Nets, you've got the Bucks. And then from there, there's like 3 games separating 4 through 12. Everybody's just bunched up right there. How do the Bulls separate themselves and get into that pack? If they could get one of those middle seeds where they're not playing the Nets in the first round or, the Sixers in the first round, how do they do that? And what do you actually foresee at the trade deadline?
Well, I think if they keep the team as is, I think there's a good chance they're going to move up. I mean, right now the Knicks are the 4th seed, and it's I know a lot of people love to laud Tom Thibodeau. The fact is that the Knicks have had one guy miss games due to COVID. I've never seen a team so lucky. Almost every team has been ravaged by this horrific disease all year. They've missed one player, and that's Frank Nicky, whatever his name is, who sucks anyhow, doesn't play anyhow. So that's been extremely fortunate for them in the long run. I don't see that continuing. I think the Knicks are going to fall. The Heat are moved up to 5. The Celtics are at 6. The Raptors are at 7 right now. All of those teams are just, 1 or 2 games within, 500. The Bulls could easily move up to 4 if they play well enough down the stretch. So, I think what they should do is just keep the team as is and try to actually improve it if possible. I threw out there today, I heard Bill Simmons offer this about trading Porzingis for Otto Porter Jr. and Lauri Markkanen. I would look into making that deal. I absolutely would do that deal and try to improve the team in some way, some form or fashion, instead of always looking to try to get younger and looking out in the distance and seeing, looking out on the horizon, when instead looking at the team that we have now and saying this team can develop into something. Why don't we make it better? That would be the way I would go. And if they do get to 4 or 5, there's not a team I'd be scared of. Obviously I don't think they're beating the 76ers. I don't think they're beating the Nets. And I don't think they're beating the Bucks. But if they get to 4, they could beat the Knicks. They could beat the Heat. They could beat the Celtics. They could beat the Raptors. They could beat the Hornets. I'm not saying that those are going to be easy games. They're definitely not going to be favored. But I don't think any of those teams are at all anywhere close to unbeatable.
What other questions do you have, Alex?
Well, I guess one last question I had regarding the Bulls just this season is, we talked about the playoffs, obviously, but by season's end, where do you think would be a spot? I know wins are kind of hard to judge in a year where you're trying to just kind of figure out where you're going, but what's a reasonable record to say, you know what, they're in a good spot? Does that really exist? Or are you just more into the let's watch game by game and just see what happens type of thing?
No, I think they definitely need to be like a 7 seed. 7 seed or higher. Have you heard my prediction? 7 pick in 17, 7 pick in 18, 7 pick in 19, 7 seed in 21, 7 title in 23. That's what I want, the type of progression I want to see for this Bulls team. And everybody laughs. Oh, yeah, come on, Freddie, you crazy? The Warriors won 23 games, I think, in 2012 with, Curry and, a lot of those guys who were winning titles on the roster. Curry and Clay were both on the roster. It doesn't happen overnight. And you need these first-round exits, these playoff exits, like happened to the Warriors. And when they lost in the first round, they won the title the next year. Look at the Bulls in 2009 against the Knicks. That was essential for the development of Rose and Noah. And 2 years later, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. You need to have these types of series. It's not always Rose. Look at Denver 2 years ago when they lost to the Timberwolves. They didn't get in the playoffs. And then the following year, you take a step by step by step. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen pretty quickly. Development can happen quickly, and a team can go from the first round exit of the playoffs to a championship series within 2 to 3 years. That's how quickly development can occur. So that's what I really want the Bulls to do, is go for 7, go for 6, really try to make the playoffs, not just to play in at 9 or 10, and really try to take a step forward instead of pushing everything further down the line and buying more time. We got enough good young players, and Wendell Carter Jr., Patrick Williams, obviously Levine, who's at 25 and under, Kobe White. Let's try to make these guys develop by surrounding them with good veteran talent, which we've already done, and maybe looking to add instead of subtract.
Well, thank you so much, Fred, for being on. Really appreciate you taking the time to be on here. Everybody, make sure you check out Fred on Twitter at CBEFred. You can check him out on the Big Red Bus podcast and at chicagobullseye.com. Anything else you want to plug, Fred?
Yeah, just the Big Red Bus. Obviously, it's with Doug Tonis. I just had Sean Hyken of the Bleacher Report on. Highly recommend that listen, and obviously Darnell Mayberry two listens ago. I still do the Chicago Bullseye, although less occasionally. So the Big Red Bus is the one where you'll hear me the most often every week, and then occasionally on ESPN 1000 with Waddle and Sylvie. Guys, I can't thank you enough for having me on, man. We got to do it again soon sometime.
Absolutely.
I have to have you on our show. Let's do that for the playoffs. What do you say?
That would be a blast. And
Absolutely.
Quick story is my buddy Gary's a Bull season ticket holder, and that playoff series from a few years ago when it was every game was like triple overtime.
That was 2009. Yeah, against the Celtics.
He took me to one game in that series, and it was the blowout. And after that, he's like, "You're never going again to a game. You are bad luck."
That was game 3. I was at that game. That was when Derrick Rose got his MVP, Rookie of the Year trophy, in game 3. Yeah, I'll never forget that. What a downer that was. But overall, what a series that was, huh?
That was a beautiful series that I had to watch the rest of the games on TV because I was banished because I'm bad luck.
Exactly.
I was a freshman in high school during that series.
You are a baby.
By the way.
You're a baby.
Yeah. Indeed.
I'm old, and we got to get rid of COVID so Doug can have his draft night parties again because those are a blast.
Amen. That sounds great, guys. Yeah, definitely love to see you guys there coming up this year. Hopefully June, man. Wouldn't it be great if we can have that party again? At least socially distance it.
Yeah, I'm vaccinated, so I'm okay.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, great. Yeah. So hopefully I can get it in the near future, and then we could all get together again by June, man. Oh, man, wouldn't that be cool?
That would be a blast.
I love that. It's always a good time down there.
Be sure to keep talking to my brother on Twitter. I used to be on Twitter, very active, not anymore, but I know you can keep talking to my brother on Twitter. And by the way, for reference, if you go to his Twitter page, if you look at his profile pic, I think it's the same one. He's walking out in a tux. It's his wedding. There's somebody right behind him. That's me. For your reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, there we go. Jay Pad, I love that guy, man. And thanks a lot for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. This was a great time, and I always love talking Bulls. And anytime you want to have me on, I'd be happy to come on again.
It was great having you, man.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Have
a good night. Bye-bye.
Well, Alex, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Google Play, Spotify. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. And until next time, bear down.
Break. The good Lord wants the Cubs to win.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win. Cubs win. Cubs win.
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.